Let me welcome all of you. Uh, Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It depends on the time zone that you are attending from. I know Professor Neil, it's like 6 a.m., right? Or 5 a.m. maybe in Los Angeles right
Yes.
now. I can expect that, yeah. So we are so thankful for having you today. And let's begin the discussion. So, kindly, if you have any kind of inquiries or questions or points that you would like to start the discussion with, the chat box is welcome. You can raise your hands. You can, um, express yourself in whatever mean that you would like to. Meanwhile, I have a couple of questions that I think will trigger a kind of a fruitful discussion with a high potential to share the experiences that we have with this distinctive group today. So, my first question: will the traditional notions of aesthetics in architecture be challenged by the new rising tsunami of text image generators? Our traditional knowledge system, our traditional aesthetical value, I think it is now challenged. But is it a positive point to be challenged by machine, by an text image generator, which, for example, DALI or Midjourney or whatever AI bots? So, would anyone would like okay, I can see Professor Nuri is laughing a little bit, smiling. I think you have, yeah, a good discussion, a good point of view regarding this issue. Can you share with us kindly?
Well, in fact, my paper, which I've sent already and will be played soon, is really about this. I think two things. One is that this is really a crucial moment. I think we're suddenly discovering what we can do with AI, and I'll talk about that in the paper, which is actually a very introductory paper. But I think what we're discovering, and we've been shocked by it, is actually how a human working with AI is superior to a human not working with AI. And it's opened up a whole new language, a whole new way of thinking. It's a mixed blessing though, because I think while I think it's affording some very interesting new work that's coming in, and everyone seems to be fascinated with these new tools. At the same time, there's a dark side to this, in that it's exposing how actually uncreative we are. We thought we were very creative, but now what we're seeing is something that is allowing people to have a kind of almost like a prosthesis, an extension of their imagination, and able to generate work that previously unseen before. So I think on the whole, it's a very good thing, but there is a dark side there. It's exposing how limited we are as designers.
Well, yeah, thank you for this answer. I do have also a point of view that I'd like to share with you all. I think defining or interpreting art, especially art and notions of aesthetics, it differs very. It is unique. It's according to each architect and each artist point of view. So the same notion could be translated into several visual materials. The AI, according to its machine learning, maybe or training, suggests some kind of formal characteristic of certain visual material, which might not be the case. So yeah, that might kill creativity a little bit, as on the other hand, it might trigger our imagination. It might inspire us to start training. But I do think each graduate of architecture has, or fresh architects, students of architecture, has a high degree of creativity. On the other hand, the seasoned architect has a lot of experience, but not the same degree of creativity as the unconstrained student with constraints of architecture. So we have two kind of architects. I think experienced architects may make a very good use of such a technology to be inspired, and he can translate that inspiration into a real kind of architecture. But on the other hand, it would be threaten our educational system, architectural education. I think the architecture education has suffered very much since that last 25 years or 20 years, since our shift from traditional studio using the T-squares and then the emergence of the CAD or the computer-aided drafting, which was turned into CADD, computer-aided drafting design, and then transformed into CAD, computer-aided design. So from drafting to drafting design to design, and later on, the revolution that occurred in 2007 associated with the BIM or the building information modeling, which is accused at weakening the projection skills and the drafting skills to many students, but at the same time, on the level of practice, it had contributed valuably, really, in our practice. And now we are facing the new tsunami of the AI generators, which I do believe in the future will converge and will maybe merge with the BIM technology. So we will have a smart central BIM model, not only on the scale of aesthetics of architecture aesthetics, but also at the generative forms of plans. So even the function the function and the plan solution also could witness a high kind of transformation. So we have a question from Dr. Osama Omar. Dear Dr. Osama, I have a question. Will metaverse help in expressing space architecture, or maybe he means the contribution to space architecture? Would anyone would like to contribute with an answer?
I wouldn't mind just saying something about BIM. I mean, first of all, what we're seeing now is just the tip of the iceberg. It's actually just a very almost superficial, I would say, sketching device. But I think what we've got to be aware of that actually under development at the moment is a whole range of AI software that in 3 years' time is going to completely transform architecture. And I say that because one of my doctoral candidates at Florence National University is one of the leaders in the world in developing the software. Her name's Wan Yu He, and she runs a company called ASCAAD. And what they're aiming for is in 3 years' time, they're aiming for a platform that will go from data all the way through to fabrication. And all of the processes that we do at the moment, i.e., for example, in Zaha's office, they use Maya, then they go into Rhino, then they go into BIM. All that will be gone. It will be a seamless platform. The future of BIM is not BIM; it's something else. And but it will be a one that is able to respond to everything. It'll be able to calculate our structures. It'll be able to continually monitor the costs. It'll be able to engage with environmental concerns and so on. But that's the important thing, not what's happening now. This is just a glimpse. All of a sudden, architects can see this thing and they're amazed by it. But actually, in 3 to 5 years' time, there's going to be something much more radical, which is going to affect architectural practice and completely transform it. So it's not been, I mean, this is not being made public yet, but these are the discussions that are going on. I know that's the research that's been undertaken right now.
Yeah, it's really amazing, the accelerating pace of technology. You can imagine just 200 years ago, the latest technology was the wooden wagons pulled by horses. And now we have all kind of AI that is thinking and proxying us in many tasks. So yeah, I can imagine. And I think I heard one quote from one of the key scientists that goes like this: we will reach a verge of point that the technology that will occur in the morning will be obsolete at the evening. So that it's a little bit scary, but really we are tired from just running after technology. So we have another questions. By using metaverse, can the traditional clients of projects totally depend on themselves with disappearance of the architect completely? So this argument assumes that our practice is a little bit threatened by the AI or the new evolving of artificial intelligence. Will our role as architects vanish with the rise of these immersive technology? This is a very debatable question, by the way. And would Dr. Mustafa would like to contribute? I see you're raising your hands.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sauer. I actually have a question to Dr. Leach, and it's mostly about, do you think like AI is mostly about copying and combining an already existing pieces of work in order to produce kind of something that, that is tried to be novel? I mean, for instance, it looks like it's really amazing the kind of work that we see from like Midjourney and DALL-E, and it's fascinating. And but I think it's mostly the result of that product is mostly like combining like two things and producing something novel. So it's like for instance. There's this argument in Islamic architecture, if we want to produce something novel, should we copy from the past? Should we combine different vocabularies, or we should look back at the elements that generated those pieces of work and try to be creative with those elements to produce something new? So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that. Is it like going to be produced something really novel that's on many levels?
Yeah, I mean, So maybe I could go back to GANs. This is the model that was dominant until recently, generative adversarial networks. And the most dominant early one was something called style GANs, which would literally take all the data that you had before, i.e. your previous work, and generate something out of that, interpolate something out of it. In other words, the search space remained within that body of work. But also alongside that, there've been other forms of GANs, such as cycle GANs, where effectively you're extrapolating. In other words, rather interpolating, which is an internal thing, extrapolating, you're expanding outwards by effectively breeding different entities together. So typically Daniel Bolajan has been using images of, say, the Sagrada Familia and a walk through the forest. Just you breed them. And I think that process is precisely what's happening right now with these diffusion platforms. You're able, in the prompt, to mix things together. So for example, I often would take the work of Zaha Hadid. Actually, she's always very good because there's so much of her work online. Therefore, they can identify that. Some other architects, it's impossible to use their name, but Zaha is well known, and as a prompt, she's quite useful. But if, for example, you bred Zaha with, I don't know, white lilies or something like that, or something, or orchids or whatever, you could imagine something that's going to come out that is going to be a combination of those things, so that the possibilities open up rather than close down. So that would be my thinking on that. Just to come to sum, I just want to say that my next book, I've already got a contract for it, and I was putting it off, is called The Death of the Architect, because precisely the threat that it's posing, and it's not just AI. I think the point is that already the profession is struggling. Only 5% of buildings are done by architects, and in places like the UK, for example, more than 50% of the buildings now are done through a developer. In other words, the architect is no longer in charge. That model we had from Alberti of the architect being in charge is obsolete in the UK and maybe other places too. So there are a lot of different factors that are contributing to it, not just simply the growth of AI, but certainly it's that. So I think it's accelerating that process, I would say. We have to be aware of this. That's the important thing.
Thank you, Professor Anil. We have two raising hands, Dr. Islam and Mr. Muhammad. So is it a question or a contribution to the discussion?
It's some of question or requires Dr. Samer. Multiverse is new opportunities for architect or designer in addition to our field as education field. My question here is about our new requirement in education or practice. Sorry. What
انت رحتي كونفرتي هذا الميتنج ليش طيب؟
Excuse me, guys. Can we just kindly mute our mics? Thank you. Please continue, Dr. Islam.
Okay. Multiverse is a new opportunity for architect, for designer, for students, all kinds of fields that serve our profession and education. The question here is about what are the new requirements for profession or education. It will give us the opportunity to change our curriculum to have AI as artificial intelligence or virtual multi-universe, or just it's like a trending issues that we face. What are our requirements for changing our profession or education by this kind of artificial intelligence field?
Well, would anyone would like to contribute to an answer?
If I may add, so to answer your question, I wanted to contribute and also expand on Dr. Islam's point as well. So one of the points I wanted to add was simply the adoption of these upcoming tools, which is also part of what I'm trying to research right now as well, looking at VR and AR tools and also mixed reality tools as well. But in addition, we are running also a different design studio class, which also hosts the utilization of AI as a design tool alongside the initial tool set of all of any architectural designer. So the idea of thinking that an architect might be obsolete is a topic of discussion, but you can kind of see a difference where, for example, I remember about 5 years ago, so we have the different courses, which is the MArch part 2, which is the accredited part for architecture in the UK, and then you have also the MA course. You have students, basically most English students would usually go for the MArch part 2 because they usually proceed with that because that's the accredited course. Most international students do not take that course because they usually don't have to take they don't have to go through that whole process of 7 years in the UK. So they do the MA instead. The MA itself is a course that explores that same design fundamental, but it's also very experimental. We're working with VR tools, implementing AR, AI as design tools, and actually embracing them as part of our design tool set. And whenever we look at that experimentation, we also then see with every single upcoming cohort, we see more and more English students who would rather not do the MArch and rather do the MA because of the experimental aspect. We look at employers from back home, in Qatar and even in the UK, who also embrace and look at upcoming designers who have an openness to experimenting with these tools. So some people come across as feeling very overwhelmed because they feel like an AI tool can replace them. But currently, right now, AI is only limited to, for example, generating image to image generation, from text to image generation. And then you also notice that currently, for the time being, it's limited to the fact that it only generates 2D images. The next step will be 3D modification and how it can basically start to create full-fledged buildings. I would imagine this to be within the next 2 years. The question is, how do we embrace that, or how can we allow that to be part of our toolset instead of trying to fight it?
Thank you for your contribution. I think our time has ended. This is a very valuable discussion, and I do believe that it can't really, half an hour is not enough, or 20 minutes is not enough. We need to extend it a little bit more in the future. But for the time being, let's just continue with the program of the ASCAAD, and we will see you for the next session. I think it will be the keynote speech by Professor Neil Litch. So thank you all, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.